Okay, so let's begin with our prayer, please. Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful parent of compassion, in your presence, eternal one, source of strength for us, as you have been for our ancestors, we very humbly acknowledge you. What are we? What is our life that you have done such great kindness to us? Therefore, we place our appeals before you, so that you may forgive and absolve us of all our faults and failings. That our faults never become barriers between us and you. And may it be your desire to prepare our hearts to feel awe and love for you. May you listen to these words of ours. May you open our encumbered hearts to the mysteries of your Torah. May this our study be a source of pleasure before your throne of glory like sweet incense. May you shower down upon us the light of our soul's source in all the ways by which we define ourselves. May the sparks of your holy servant, to whom you have revealed these words to the world, shine and sparkle. May their merit, ancestors' merit of their Torah, innocence and their holiness, and for us, prevent us from stumbling when we study these words. In their merit, may our eyes be illumined by what we study. As is the saying of the singer of Israel, open my eyes that I may gaze into the wonders of your Torah. May the words of my mouth, the thoughts of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock, and my redeemer. For it is the eternal grant wisdom, knowledge and understanding issues forth. Na 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 na. Na 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 Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. No 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 no. Oh no 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 no. No 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no no no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no no no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. We're going to begin at the top of page 394. And the theme is a continuation of the discussion triggered by the verse in the story of the birth of the sons of Jacob, that God remembered Rachel, and she has a son named Joseph. And then, of course, after that, the second one is Benjamin, at whose birth she dies. But the Zohar has been looking at this topic from this angle, and the idea is that they have two terms that they keep on bringing up together, Pekidah and Zechira. Right? Hashem pakad et Zara, and by Sarah it says that God pakad, God took note of her and tended to her. Our Torah reading this coming Shabbat is Pekudei, right? The taking of accounts, and the other word is Zachar, Zechira, remembering, right? The Vayiskor Elohim et Rachel. So when do we use one? When do we use the other? And the Zohar has split it up. Pekidah comes from the male aspect of God, from the female aspect of God. Zechira comes from the male aspect of God. So the male outpouring into the female recipient of all of that blessing and abundance, that life-giving force. And then the Pekidah is the administering of it, the dispensing of it, to make it come about. So we had right before this, in the previous, the last paragraph, the previous page, that both of these verbs or gerunds, remembering and attending, can be for good, and they can be for not so good. And we talked a little bit about the last one, where of course we have, each of these, for Sarah and for Rachel, we have an attending Pekidah, we have a Zechira, that's all good. They have children, it's beautiful, wonderful, just what God wanted and just what they wanted. But sometimes it's not so good. Sometimes it's for evil. But the strange example that they gave was about God forgiving the children of Israel. But we talked about the idea that even though the forgiveness is there, it is with a remembrance of their failure to be connected to God. So even though God overcomes the sins of the children of Israel by forgiving them and accepting them and reconciling with them, nevertheless, the remembering of the sin is not a good thing. It's not bringing any nachas to God. So that's what we talked about at the end of last time. Now we're at the top of 394, and we did Zechira, and now we do Pekidah, attending. So if there is anybody among us who would like to do the reading, I'm going to talk slowly. There's Beryl, all right. It says I think that you're still trying to connect with the audio. Still connecting to the audio. Oh, now you're connected. Okay, right? Yes? Good. So, don't go. Disappear. Right, we're going to try it again. There you are. So, Beryl, can you go? Can you read? You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Okay. Can
Now
you
I
hear
can
me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Maybe my next week this will be resolved. Keda, attending for good, as is written, I have surely attended to you. Keda for evil, as is written, Ufa kadu.
Upakadati.
Ufakadati, I will punish their transgression with the rod.
Right, I won't let it pass. Right, this is going to count. So you have here for good. God says to Moses at the very beginning of their encounter, I'm here. I've been paying attention to the children of Israel. You think I've forgotten you? I haven't forgotten you. I'm preparing the way for liberation. Everything is going to work out great. So that's for good. But then we also have the word kida, as for instance, in the Psalms, that I will remember your transgression and pay you back for it, right? We have it in other verses as well. Pokei davon avot al banim v'al bnei banim. And we have it in the Ten Commandments that God takes account of the sins and doesn't forget them. So having somebody who actually pays attention is not it's not automatically good. Depends on what we deserve and on what we're doing. What is God paying attention to? Okay. So we go. All supernal mysteries.
All supernal mysteries, all of these rememberings and attendings for good are well-known rungs. Mystery of faith, male and female. A single mystery, remembering and attending. These are for good.
Okay, good. So the first part of what the Zohar says is we've already established this. Well-known rungs. Well-known rungs mean well-known levels of godly manifestation. So the masculine rung or the masculine level of godly presence, and the feminine rung, the feminine level of godly presence. That's each of them can be manifest for good, attending to, and then remembering, meaning pouring forth, the goodness of God into this world. So and they all work together, right? It's a single mystery. So just pointing it out again, I probably pointed out many times, the word mystery, we understand it as being something you can't figure out, or something that you have to try to figure out, right? So, that's what detectives do. So the solve mysteries. So mysteries are meant to be solved, or some mysteries are unsolvable. So we just don't understand them. We don't get it. But for the Zohar, mystery also conveys the idea of unity. Mystery is the fact that everything is connected. That's the mystery. That's the raza de mehemnuta. That's the secret of faith. So, or the mystery of faith. The mystery is the wonderment of the fact that these things are connected, that both of these sides belong with each other, even though they seem to be separate, even though you could even say, even if they're complementary still means that one is adding to the other and the other one is benefiting and adding to the other. There's a one and an another. And the mystery is to affirm that no matter how much we talk about them as separate, they are one. So mystery for the Zohar conveys unity, conveys union, even and despite of the language that we must use to express ourselves, that separates out these aspects of unity. A single mystery means a single unity. Okay, so that's the remembering and attending all work together. And as we've said, this could be for good. What about now, the next part? We continue.
Remembering and attending for evil are mystery of the other side, abiding in mystery of other gods, male and female as one. This, remembering, this, attending. These are constantly poised for evil. These opposite those. From here issue all mysteries of faith, all supernal holiness, as has been established. From here issue all injuries, all evil, all death, all evil aspects and species of the world, as has been established. This, the converse of that.
Okay, so what the Zohar now says is it lays out this, after talking about the mystery of oneness in the aspect of goodness, it now sets up a dichotomy and says that there is a converse. There's an opposite side, literally, sitra achra, the other side. And the other side is the side of evil. The other side is trying as best as they can to remember and attend for evil, poised for evil, right? Always trying to create havoc and to create harm. So, we've dealt with this countless times as we've studied the Zohar, so many places where the Zohar grapples with this question of where does evil come from? And the Zohar does not only give one answer, it gives many answers. This answer is not the same as some of the other answers that it has given. This answer is much more emphasizing a dualism. Other places in the Zohar, we've looked at places where the mystery ends up actually uniting in some mysterious, hard to grasp way, that evil and good all come from the same source. But here, the Zohar insists, no. Good comes from godliness. Good comes from the godly aspects that we know so well. Chesed and Shekhinah, and all of the aspects of God that operate to make the world continue to be. And then there's this outside reality of God, a reality outside of God. At least that's the way it sounds here, as being split off, lurking, trying to intervene, looking for opportunities. Anybody that's following the news can actually see evil in action, the way it works its devious ways, the way it conveys its way of looking at things, and seizes opportunities to cause hurt, injury, death, trouble. So the Zohar here sees this as an opposite, right? Opposite of God. This is not a godly source of energy. This is an anti-godly source of energy. An opponent, literally an opponent, an opposite force that's trying to undo or anti-do any of the good that God is trying to accomplish. Yeah. And what it says also is that there's a unity in that side, because that side is in many ways a mirror image of the divine. There's a male and a female aspect to evil. You've had names all through the Jewish tradition that have been used. Samael, for instance, and Satan, things like that, are the devil, the demonic ruler of the other side. And we have, for instance, Lilith. Lilith is sometimes called his consort, and they unite together to be able to do all of the terrible things that they love to accomplish. So this is the trend of thought that we have expressed in this paragraph. David, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm wondering why it's necessary to bring this up now. There are so many occasions when I guess we're talking about remembering and attending, what is it, a behavior or a relationship that could be for the good or for evil. A few weeks ago, we were talking about charisma in Torah class. There's nothing evil about charisma, you know. Arguably, many rabbis are charismatic. So are evil people, perhaps. So I don't know. I'm just wondering, is that the point of bringing this up, or
Well, so all right. Anybody else want to chime in on this? What are the kinds of questions or problems that the Zohar might be addressing here? Seth, you wanted to say something?
It was a similar but slightly different. I was just not sure that they were representing these two as a different union, or as opposed to the same union and a different manifestation of that same union. The footnotes clearly lead us to think that you're talking about an opposite, right? A different union, but my reading of the text doesn't necessarily go there. So is it, again?
Well, that's where you get at the end. I mean, that's why it says you have to read it with a certain inflection. From here, issue all mysteries of faith, all supernal holiness. From here, issue all injuries, all this, the converse of that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the statement that's saying they're opposites. They're not, you know, if the Zohar wanted to make the point that you make, which I want to pursue in a second, then you would have after that, it would be an all is one. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what when the Zohar does that kind of thing, when the Zohar says there's light and there's dark and all is one. You know, they know that they're talking about things that sound like they don't go together, and then they put in mystery of faith, right? And that's what they're doing here, each on its own side, male and female, but one, right? Now binaries, right? And then that, you know, so it takes the time and it makes the point when it wants to. The fact that it doesn't do that by the end of the paragraph, I think justifies the kind of reading that we have, that Danny Matt puts out, and that I feel is absolutely the appropriate reading. I see, that's how I'm reading it also. Mm-hmm. But your question is not going to go away, and that's partly in a response to David's question, because that is the problem. The problem in the end is if we're drawing manifestations of reality back up into some supernal source, into some higher level of being that makes this stuff possible. So the old theodicy question will never go away. The question then is, you want to thank God for the good, but you don't want to blame God for the bad. So what's going on? And how good could a God be if God is sometimes good and sometimes bad? That's not a good God would always be good. A good God wouldn't let the bad happen. So this is the struggle that will never, ever, ever go away. If you're contemplating, the overall, reality that we live in. The examples that you're giving are, yes, people have all kinds of capacities, charisma, power, all kinds of talents. We can use those talents for good. We can use those talents for bad. But in the end, when the stuff is happening and we say, oh, thank God, the convoy to save the people came through and saved all of the children. So yes, wonderful. So why don't, and so, to echo Job's wife, why don't we curse God when the saving doesn't happen, when it doesn't occur, when this evil man, Yamach Shemo, may his name be erased, is slowly grinding forward and killing and destroying and killing and destroying. So, as I said, we've talked about this forever, and we will talk about this forever. And going back to what we have earlier, the first paragraph on this page, there it seems that we are actually putting the evil part into God's lap, where we quote a verse where God says, I will punish their transgressions with the rod. I'm not going to let them get away with it. So I'm going to cause injury. I'm going to cause the pain and the suffering because it's justified, right? I think because they're bad. Well, pain and suffering is pain and suffering. So that seems to be okay. So when do we ascribe evil events, evil consequences, evil forces? When do we say that they're God? And when do we say no, they're the devil? That's what the Zohar is positing, that these are options that we have to struggle with, and that we need to say, you know what, some of this is not God. But of course, if it's not God, we have the next question, right? And I'm not saying anything new. I mean, this is the same stuff that goes around and around. If it's not God, then where is God in letting this happen? So that comes back again to Seth's point. Maybe it is a side of God, and maybe it does come from God ultimately. And then we have to answer it or not answer it in different kinds of ways. Larry.
I was just going to react to two things. One is that, I have a sense from the little I've studied with you of Zohar that it's not a philosophical work, a systematic philosophical work that's treating of the problem of evil or other problems in a systematic way and saying, like you would see in Aristotle or in the Rambam, like going this and that. But it's concerned with these problems, and it's kind of tossing over the problems and twisting around and going round and round about the problem. That was one comment I thought. But the other thing is just a process question, a procedural question, which has been troubling me since the beginning. You know how, like, for instance, in the footnote there on 601, it says that, the male and the female, Tiferet and Shechina, which I think we all know, which is male and female by now. But nowhere in the body of the Zohar so far, you don't see these sfirot. You only see them in the footnote. The Shechina is constantly mentioned, but other than Shechina, Shechina is mentioned only as like God's presence. But in other words, the 10 sfirot that are on our chart are not mentioned except in the footnotes. And it's almost like the Zohar is trying to keep it secret, like it's trying to hide it, and you have to get the key. And that sort of puzzles me because I never read a book before where the author doesn't want to tell you what's going on and wants to like hide the ball. I'm just wondering about that.
You never read The Guide for the Perplexed?
Yeah.
In his introduction, he says, I don't want to tell you what's going on.
Okay.
Rambam says, here's, trigger warning. I'm going to write this in a way that unless you really, really get it, you're not going to get it. I'm writing it specifically to not help you out. And unless you can figure this out anyway, in which case you really don't need me, when you're going to read this is just going to not make sense. That's what the Rambam says. And the Zohar has that to a certain extent as well. The Zohar feels, and this actually, it brings both of your questions together. The Zohar is not a philosophical book in terms of methodology. You're right, right? The idea that philosophy is supposed to work in some kind of clear-cut, system of thinking is, pretty strong in the philosophical tradition. Although you've got, Nietzsche is not exactly a systematic thinker. A lot of continental philosophy doesn't quite seem to follow the straight and narrow in the way it goes. But, even if the methodology is rejected, the imperative to make sense is, there for every human being. Now, making sense can be understood in many ways. It can make sense in different ways. Poets make sense in a different way than a mathematician makes sense. Although by now, I have no idea what the mathematicians are saying. So, but the making sense is still an imperative. The Zohar is not gonna want to create people who are bollocksed up in their faith. The Zohar wants to help those who really, really can follow this path, as meandering and as zigzaggy, and as it comes back on itself and contradicts itself and then goes forward and then goes backwards. It feels that it's revealing sense. I mean, the word sense, like seichel, is what the Zohar says is the basis of its whole project. V'hamaskilim, k'zohar harakia yazhiru, right? That the word Zohar, the radiance of the Zohar, is for the maskilim, for the people who can make sense of all of this, for the people who have that kind of seichel, who can look into things and see what needs to be seen. So the struggle to somehow come to grips with all of this stuff in a satisfactory way, and not just simply go, who knows? It's too complicated for me, right? Could be this way, could be that way, right? The Zohar doesn't want you to be an agnostic. God forbid. The Zohar wants you to embrace a mystery of faith. The Zohar wants you to somehow really, really come to an affirmation in some kind of awed way, but in some kind of knowing way that this, even if it's only sometimes that you get it, but then you will always hold on to it, that this is God's world and that God is really God. And so then the business with the sfirot that you're talking about is an important point, and I sometimes have mentioned it. I really try as much as I can. It's hard, but as much as I can to avoid talking about sfirot. I think it's sometimes it helps you, it gives you a handle on things, but I know too many very, very knowledgeable students of Kabbalah who that's what they do. They're like constantly figuring out, and then with certain systems like the Ari should forgive me for saying this. It becomes this this super complicated juggling act, and the better you are at it, the more supposedly you get it. And I don't feel it that way. I don't experience it that way. People that, we're in a few months, we're going to start counting Sfira. We're going to count the days between Pesach and Shavuot. And people are going to say, today is the Malchus in Yesod, right? Or today is the Yesod in Malchus, or the Gevura in Tiferes. Leave me alone. If it helps you, to somehow connect up with some aspect of the complexities of reality, all right. To me, it doesn't help, and I really think that too many other people that juggle that kind of stuff don't get it. But on the other hand, it gives you a little handle. It gives you a little bit of a handle. And whether the male is Tiferet or Yesod, for me, is irrelevant. You'll find commentaries. No, he says it's Tiferes. No, it's Yesod. He says Yesod. Are you kidding? It's like, it's so I, take a broader brush approach to this kind of stuff. And I think that it's important, again, to be able to grasp it in words that make sense to you. Even the words that don't make sense, you should be able to talk about it in a way that makes sense to you, to a certain extent. But you know what? Maybe I'm missing the whole point. I don't know. Yeah.
All right.
Yes, David.
But this Zoharic way, I don't know how else to describe it, this point of view, this style of thinking, can help illuminate things, for instance, that I've thought about. It clarifies things. For instance, in the Torah, in Genesis, it speaks of Eve as Ozer Kenegdo.
Ezer Kenegdo.
Ezer Kenegdo. Okay. Ezer Kenegdo. And here we just which means, for those Hebrew speakers, a helper in opposition, I guess. And here we just read a paragraph which uses the terms opposite or so man and woman are, woman is a helper of man in opposition, or if you don't think of it as a physically facing one another in opposition, it gets to the theme of unison or unity somehow. Anyway, it can be applied to our daily reading of the Torah, I guess, is all I'm saying.
Well, so I'm not going to deal with that example that you gave, but I would hope that it would help with reading the Torah, and I hope that it helps with our living. Otherwise, I wouldn't do this every week. So I hope so. Jen, yeah.
So just a question. This is still all kind of new to me, but does a Zohar purport to be for all Jews, or is it just, this is one path that may work for some people, as opposed to, does it really want to, does the Zohar itself like present itself as something for everyone? Or, I mean, because there's so many traditional restrictions on even reading it anyway. You have to be, this, that, or the other thing. Like, is there any acknowledgement in the Zohar itself? Yeah, this actually might not be your path. Like, so.
Well, the Zohar is a realistic that it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's definitely claiming that it is the truth. And Kabbalists.
Does that mean you're like lacking if you don't get in?
A physicist, would tell me that what they're doing is true, or a mathematician would tell me that what they're doing is true. Guess what? I haven't the foggiest idea what they're doing. It's not for me. So it's just, okay. So maybe, and some part of them will say, this is not for everybody. So one part of them will have, a little bit of compassion for me, maybe instead of contempt, and go, so Greenstein, he just really doesn't get it all the way. But thankfully I do.
Okay. Okay, get
the
that.
Ramban Nachmanides was a great mystic who, when Nachmanides would go off into a little bit of mystical and very, very hard to understand expression in his commentary on the Torah, he would go al derech ha'emet, and now by way of truth, let me tell you what's going on. So the Zohar is convinced that it is privy to gates of truth, to gates that lead to truth, the revelations of truth, some of the truths never before apprehended by anyone, truths that are created by Rashbi and by the group, sometimes truths that are revealed by the people that they meet on the road. And that's where they sort of, go, look, You can find truth in all these other people who are not stamped and sealed as approved Kabbalists and so on and so forth. But there's a reality that they understand sociologically speaking, that not everybody is doing this, and not everybody values it, and not everybody gets it. So in the end, that's part of the messianic hope. In the messianic vision, that's when Umala haaretz dayat Hashem. And that day, the whole earth will be filled with actually knowing God. Right? But that's not here yet. So now it requires a vanguard of people to keep pushing this forward and creating it and then dispensing it. And the Kabbalists had fights about this. Do you keep it secret? Do you have a very closed group? Or do you let it sort itself out? Let's see if maybe somebody from the outside will surprise us and be into this. So the Zohar, again, to put it very simplistically, the Zohar is for making it go out there and taking the chances without the illusion that everybody will get it, but somebody else might get it, versus other groups, often identified with Nachmanides' followers, with the Ramban school, which said, no, this is a very exclusive club, and there should be entrance requirements. You have to prove yourself in terms of your piety, in terms of your acuity, in terms of your righteousness, before you have any right to expect that we're going to, start talking to you about this stuff. So, thankfully, everybody here on this screen has passed all of those tests, and is absolutely eligible to keep on going with this. But not every Kabbalist thought that was the right idea. So yes, the Zohar wants to spread it, understanding that right now it's not universal, and that there's actually opposition to it.
But it wants to be universal. It thinks like
wants
this
to
is
be
actually
and when it gets to be universal, that's when world peace and world wholeness will be achieved. Because once you get this stuff, you won't do and you won't feel any of the garbage that fills our world. That's what the Zohar believes.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Could it be said, or is it too simple-minded for me anyway, to say that Chassidut is more consonant with Zohar thinking, and maybe the Misnagim are not so much so there?
I don't know, because everything comes with its own baggage and with its own costs. There were a lot of mitnagdim. The Vilna Gaon was a super important Kabbalist, and he wrote. So there it is. It's out there for people to read. The Hasidim had some very important Kabbalists among them, but part of the Hasidic movement was actually to water down Kabbalah, not to go into the big mysteries, not to go into just to make it acceptable and on a easier level, popularize it and simplify it and ease it out. So you could say, well, on the one hand, that's sort of disseminating it more broadly. On the other hand, it's at through the decision of saying, actually, well, it's not exactly disseminating it. It's like taking Beethoven's Fifth and turning it into a pop song. So is that Beethoven or is it not Beethoven? Is it a kernel of Beethoven or is it a violation of Beethoven? So, those are some of the issues that get raised by that. Yeah, Jen.
Another, I guess, question or comment, but it does seem to me like the hard questions we were just talking about, of like that, where it goes from kind of unity to a sort of dualism, and bringing up like different ways to look at evil periodically, and I kind of hope almost that it doesn't answer those questions. It's like you're not going to avoid those by not studying Zohar, right? Just reading the Torah will bring you to the same place, or just looking at the world in general will get you to the same place. So it feels like, what is it that the Zohar is saying is so unique about the Zohar that because it doesn't seem like it's got one particular philosophy, as others have mentioned. It's got a lot of things going on. So what is the Zohar feel that it's offering to, and I assume basically to Jews. I'm not thinking they had, I know there's a lot of Kabbalistic non-Jews, but, and there have been since the Renaissance, but what is it from the Zohar's point of view, what is it offering us that we can't get by Torah alone? Because I feel like we can read Job for just a glimmer of what hard questions we're looking at. So where does the Zohar take us that goes beyond that?
So how about we study Zohar for another 50 years together, and then we'll answer that question a little bit better. Okay, how's that? All right.
I mean, I think it's fine. I just think that I don't even understand what the Zohar is trying to sell me. Like, I understand, like, okay, if you give me, take outside of our religion, like, actually, I do think, like, if everyone followed the Noble Eightfold Path, yeah, the world would probably be a better place. I mean, that's pretty simple, straightforward, and it does purposely avoid big questions insofar as saying, hey, your house is on fire, get out of the house first, follow this, and then we'll worry about the big stuff later. And there's a part of me that admires that. I totally get that. So it's hard for me to like understand where, I know I haven't studied much, and what I knew of not the Zohar, but of Kabbalistic, came from knowing Neoplatonism first, right? So that's like, I came into this via Plotinus, basically. So I possibly have a different understanding of what all this was about, and I might be misunderstanding a lot of stuff. But I don't understand exactly where is it, if it's going to deny unity and not try to have us like as one with God or knowing God, and now we're dualistic, but we're not going to stop at dualism. We're going to look at other angles too. Is it more exploration and less answers, which I would completely respect if that's the case? Or does it think it has like real, like just the exercises of this brings us close to God and closer than we would have gotten by any other Jewish path?
That sounds good. I like that. I like that. So I'm gonna, to a certain extent, maybe, I mean, it's interesting. Thank you for bringing it back to the question a little bit, but it's interesting, first of all, just how we have all completely gone out of and away from exploring, the question of God and evil, and we've enjoyed, I think, and I've enjoyed it. We've actively put our energies into, let's talk methodology, let's talk, all this other kind of stuff, So, if I were a Zoharic therapist, I would say something like, what? It sounds to me like there's some avoidance going on here. There's which, not that there's anything wrong with avoidance. Not that, like you said, get out of the house when it's on fire. Avoid that. So yeah.
Rabbi?
Yeah, and I want to bear with me, please. I know, Rich, I always treasure what you have to say, but I wanted. All right, you know what? No, you go first. Go ahead.
Well,
Go.
I was trying to come back to the original question as well, which.
So don't.
Well,
so wait. We'll come back. You will do a big favor.
Question.
You'll bring us back to that question, but I want to do a little methodology first. Okay, just a little more on that, which also I hope will help segue us back into the thing, into what the Zohar is trying to do in this particular case and in general. So this is a quote from a very important scholar of Zohar today. Unfortunately, the book that I would show you is downstairs right now, so I wasn't planning on showing it tonight. But imagine she's got a book about this thick, right? Like about this thick, something like 900 pages or something like that. Which is a commentary on the first 20 pages of the Zohar Shmot. Okay, so, and she's been working on this her whole life, and she's produced, many, many studies and about, not just about those 20 pages, she knows the Zohar backwards and forwards and upside down, and she's one of the major scholars today. So, this is a translation that I made of a couple of paragraphs of what she writes in some general discussion about the Zohar. So she writes like this. Indeed, sometimes there are clear advantages to murkiness, where only contradictions and meaningless texts present before us. It is obvious that the Zohar would not have gained such great popularity, how much less so canonization. All right, so the Zohar is the Zohar, not because it's just a hodgepodge of stuff that doesn't come together. Nevertheless, the murkiness is there. The fruitful combination of murkiness and other characteristics is what captures the reader's heart. First, the divine, theological, sacred content. Second, the constant moves between extreme allegiance to conventions, conceptual and literary, and unexpected shattering of these through all types of contradictions and obscurities in a bold variety of elements or through unusual use of language. So besides what the Zohar might want to teach us about God or about the human soul or about reality, the Zohar does want to teach us about a way, about the methodology, about the way that it works things through. This surprise, as well, and the pausing caused in one's thought process following the lack of clarity and the incomprehension, leave the reader in a moment of silence that interrupts the regular thought process, right? So by causing these difficulties and by causing these, shakeups back and forth where you go, wait a second, what did I just read? This doesn't gel, or this doesn't fit with what I know from before, or from what I know, period. The Zohar creates this murky sense of questioning and contradiction that leads to a silent pause. Add to this the melodiousness of the foreign and strange language, which also increases the experiential quality of the reading and which dulls criticality. And you have before you a variety of elements woven together to create a sense of enchantment from the text and a silent assent to its murkiness. So the Zohar is out to seduce you, right? Withal, the enchantment is also strongly bound up with the opposite process. Thanks to the murkiness and the movements between conventions and their shattering, the Zohar became an open book, a book that encourages a great range of interpretations, a book that, for one who is indeed interested in its contents, does not allow for evading interpretation, forcing activism upon its readers. You cannot read the Zohar like you read a newspaper or a novel. It doesn't make sense, and it makes you work to make sense out of it. The reader interested in continuing in their reading cannot remain apathetic. If they are not involved in at least some of the interpretive processes, if they are not enchanted, they will not succeed in deriving enough substance and interest, and they will abandon the battle for understanding the Zohar. So I translated that little section because I found it very, very, very provocative and very well said in terms of my own experience with the Zohar. Again, that doesn't bring us to any of the theological questions. It talks about process. It talks about methodology. It talks about the tone, the language, the path of the Zohar, and the way that the Zohar seeks to engage its readers and its listeners. So that's part of, and that again is of one piece with what I think it feels is the sense of mystery that it's trying to teach us. Yeah, Rich, back to you.
Yes, so I guess before my question, what I definitely share from what you just read was, I think when you said, it doesn't read like a novel or a newspaper, I would take it further and say that, the murkiness to me is, it doesn't read like a proof. There's the logic is, it's not something a mathematician might appreciate. And yet, over the years, there are just so many cases where it is provocative, and whether you think they're, the opinions they held are stark or whatever, it's important to evaluate. These are important questions. So, however you feel about which side they've come out on, there are a lot of questions which you need to figure out for yourself. And it seems as though, I remember back when we discussed Noah, and I reacted that, gosh, they're taking a harsh view on Noah. But, another week or two later, and, things have progressed, and it's like they're covering all different angles of it. And, stuff evolves. And as it evolves, what I found is my opinions evolve as well about various things. But my question about coming back to the original question is just very simple, I think. And it's to the extent that this description of evil, this dualistic description of evil is ungodly, if I read that right, then what is its source?
Right. So yes. So that's the tough question, right? So if God is the source of all, what sense does it make to say that God is not the source of this other side? Right? How does that let God off the hook? And that's a tremendously hard question that the Zohar again tries to address in various kinds of ways. But to use at this point, if you want to call that a simple question, so I'll give you a simple answer, right? The simple answer I would give is, just like we derive from God, but we are far from being God, so too evil derives from God, but is not God. Right? The idea that God decided to create non-godly reality both benefits us by making it possible for us to be, and also torments us because it makes it possible for evil to be.
So does that mean in some way, would it be wrong to think then that in the parallel story of God's own creation, that it's the detritus of that?
That's one way that the Zohar puts it out in other places in a kind of a pretty direct way. Yeah, it's the dregs of the creative process. Yeah. Merle, you wanted to say, and okay, Merle, then Seth.
Okay, two things. First of all, the paragraph that you just read, very, very interesting. And I think that should be the very first thing that you read when you start a Zohar class. Because no. I mean, when you get into the substance, because of course I came late to Zohar. You've been teaching it for 10 years and I just joined a year or two ago. But it's all about expectations. when you're doing anything really. So if you have the right expectations, you might not be so puzzled or frustrated because things aren't going the way things usually go when we read stuff. So if we know that few paragraphs that you read, I think we would be able to approach this with a little bit of a less linear or less everyday expectation of how things are going to materialize. So that was the first thing. Second thing is about evil. Maybe evil's there so that we're given free will. So evil's there so that we can learn to become better and better and better people. And I remember, as you mentioned a long time ago, like the 23rd Psalm, they say, "They ride in thy staff, they comfort me." And here, he at the top of the page, he says, "I will punish their transgression with the rod." So the rod is sort of part of the whole basic thing, and that's supposed to comfort you because now you're learning to be a better person. So maybe that's what it's serving that purpose.
Right, we have the famous phrase which comes from Proverbs: "Spare the rod and spoil the child."
Mhm.
Right, that using the rod in a way that's in its immediate experience painful is actually good for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a very classic and important way that people have approached this whole problem.
Instead of just being a cipher where we're kind of like a bland nothing and going along, picking oats or whatever it is, farming.
That's good to me.
Yeah, we can actually learn along the way,
Right,
and
so
create a better life, better
Right.
world. So anyway.
Right. Okay, well, just in response to your first point, I think that one of the reasons, and I could be totally wrong, one of the reasons that this quotation that I read to you may have hit home is because you've had an experience with learning the Zohar already. I don't know that it would be as meaningful as an introductory, statement. And that's one of the things, you and I know this, that I struggle in terms of teaching. I'd rather not teach about, I'd rather teach.
Right.
So, I don't want to teach about the Zohar. I want to teach Zohar. So, we'll see. Seth. And then Beryl.
Just one really basic question, kind of following up on Larry's question about the Sfirot. This image, right, that's in our book, was that in the original text? It wasn't like ripped out and like ditched somewhere, like the key, like the map, the key of the map. Like, when did that come? And I'm just curious about that.
No, look, there's been an ongoing tradition to try to visualize these things, to try to map it out for, to help comprehension, to help, organize very complicated, concepts and so on. And to visualize also in the sense of just, contemplating. Having an object to focus on. So illustrations have been around for forever. The Zohar does not have an interest in creating a systematic depiction or explanation of the Sfirot. And sometimes you're going to have commentaries who know a lot about Zohar and, who are reading, and they will disagree about if you're going to point to a reference to is which Sfira is being referenced here. They don't always agree because the Zohar is murky. There are other Kabbalistic books that decided to be not murky. One of the great books is called Shomrei Ora. Interesting parallel. This is called Sefer HaZohar, the Book of Radiance, the Book of Splendor, and that's called the Gates of Light. It's by a contemporary who many scholars think was active and in the production of the Zohar, Rabbi Yosef Chikatiya. Spanish mystic. So he wrote Shomrei. It's a great book. And each chapter is devoted to explaining one of the Sfirot. So, and giving all kinds of, metaphors and biblical references and terms and so on and so forth. It's like a real guidebook, to explaining that kind of stuff and clarifying it. And other books are like that. The Zohar is sui generis. The Zohar is very, very much choosing not to go that route. It knows that route, and it's not interested in going there. It's interested in creating a poetry rather than an owner's manual. So, but it is in that culture, and it is in that milieu. So it's useful, to have that kind of visualization. But there are zillions of other visualizations.
Right.
They're out there. In my office, come visit my office. Why don't I see you in my office ever? Come into my office one day, and I have on my wall, I have two visualizations of God. One visualization was made by a young girl a long time ago. Now I think she's in her 30s. She was maybe 10 at the time, maybe 8. I don't know. And she has a picture of God standing on top of the mountain. And God has a cape. And God has an S, emblazoned on her chest. And God is like Superwoman. And that was her. And at the top, she writes, which sounds like almost like a little blasphemy. And at the top, she writes G-D. So she's very reverent. She doesn't want to even, spell God's name wrong, or, in a non-respectful way. But that's her visualization of God. And I taped underneath hers a Kabbalistic visualization of God, which goes on, and it's also got microscopic writing and stuff, and it's this whole, again, anthropos. It's a humanizing image of God, which is quite complex and extraordinary. But that was another type of visualization. This that we have in the front of the book was, used as a kind of it doesn't have that same kind of shock value. It's much more diagrammatic. But then it was also thought of as a Kabbalistic tree, is the way it's sometimes called, or as if some people know about, which I know nothing about, chakras, right? There are these like centers of energy in the human body, and there's a very clear parallelism between the spherotic tree and the chakra diagrams. So some people see the diagram as really a kind of a washed out version of the divine body. Mm-hmm. So the use of these kinds of illustrations has been going on forever, and the use is not one way of using a particular illustration, and the illustrations go off in different directions, to try to deal with the same stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's complicated. What can I say?
Thank you. The other piece I want to say is just in praise of murkiness. And I really appreciated, thank you for reading that. And I keep wondering why I come back every week. And somehow, like when I come out of here and go, it's usually dinner time because we're on the West Coast. Like there's always one thing that I can share to Naomi, right? And out of the murkiness is like one little gem. And I was in a conversation today, unusual conversation for me in my work, because it was like a real theoretical, conceptual, intellectual thing. And it made me like go back and try to remember what I did when I was a scholar and an academic and not a program person. But anyway, the point is, it reminded me of this concept called structuration as opposed to structure. the importance of the process of structuring things is more important than analyzing the structure itself. Like paths to utopia, walking is the process. And what I really appreciated about what she wrote was it keeps us engaged. It's the process of engaging. And if I just think a little bit about my overwhelm now with the world situation, you know, you want to kind of hide and not engage. And this murkiness with little bits of enchantment keep you wanting to engage, you know, at least keeps me wanting to engage and keep asking these, keep, you know, meandering towards these really complex questions. There's just enough fruit on the vine that makes me nurtured and nourished. So that was my response to the murkiness.
Good, thank you. Meryl.
Well, this is probably very simplistic, but this is my opinion of learning, that if you have an expectation and in the process of learning, you simply meet that expectation, I find that to be a failure. Because when you really learn something, you usually go off someplace you never expected to go.
All right, right. So some people want to be taught what they already know. And if they're not being taught what they know already, they're disappointed and they're upset because they just want to hear the validation of what they, you know, already, you know, believe in or see or whatever. And what you're talking about is that stretching, right? That surprise. And for me, over and over again, the Zohar gives me that. And yeah, that's something that brings me back again and again to it. Yeah, I would, in some kind of, I'm going to just say this and then we're going to be done for tonight. It's so heavy today. I mean, now. It's, and part of the heaviness is the luxury that we live in to be safe and sound and just contemplate the horror. If we were in the horror, you know, Jen's burning building, we wouldn't have to think about all this stuff. We just have to deal with the fire and the panic and just, you know, could we save ourselves or not, or could we save the next person or not? And we're off on the side, but we know if we want to. We know how horrific the situation is in the world, and the situation is not simply the Ukraine. You know, the Ukraine is a symptom of a horrific reality that we're living in. And I am a nobody, and I don't have, you know, anything to contribute to anything here. Nevertheless, I think that what we're doing when we do this is the other side of the evil, the anti-evil. I think that if people in their own ways would be more occupied in trying to do the things that we're doing right now, then the murder and destruction and pain and horror would be less. It wouldn't have a room for itself. I think we really are engaged in the other side of that Sitra Achra approach to life. On Shabbos, I refer to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who starts his book on the Sabbath, which is an amazingly beautiful book. Everybody should read it again and again. He talks about the difference. He says human history is all about empires, civilizations, grasping for more space, for more stuff. That's what we're watching, right? We're watching this big, gigantic bully saying, I don't have enough space. I want more space. I'm going to take over this space. This is going to, solve some need that I have. I want the stuff that this space has and everything that this space includes and represents. And Rabbi Heschel says that that's history. It happens over and over again everywhere. And what the Torah gives us against that is to sanctify time, to make time holy and not to grab space. And when we sanctify time, it's actually about withdrawing from space. It's about saying, I'm not going to do all kinds of stuff to the world today. I'm not going to build XYZ. I'm not going to plant this and that and the other stuff and take control of the world around me and the space that I live in. It's about spending time instead of trying to grab space. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're spending time in a condensed effort to find holiness, to find something sacred to feel and to share with each other. That's the opposite of what's going on over there, which is so horrible. So that doesn't take away the responsibility we have to protest and to send money and to help and to do everything to support any meaningful effort to fight that evil. But in a certain kind of way, we're putting into the world something that fights the evil. That's what I would like to believe. All right. Good night.
Can you hear that sound?
Yeah. All right. Be well, everybody.
Seth,